everyone. Welcome to our Black Swan podcast. Christine here with the lovely
Patsy. Hello.
We're diving into our series on the chakras. So last week we explored the root chakra and talking about the importance of grounding and connecting to the earth, finding our stability and our security within ourselves, and the beauty of being outside and getting actually grounded with the beautiful Mother Nature, and also addressing the fear that is associated with the root chakra. And today we're kind of moving up the ladder and we're talking about our second chakra.
Svadhistana, the Sacral Chakra. I love this one.
Why?
Well, it's all about our emotions and our, I think of the first chakra as such a serious biological need, where our second one becomes such a serious emotional need. And even just needs, when I say that, I'm like, know that your wants are our needs as well. Like, it's like a need is just a really bigger want.
I like that explanation of it. Yeah, the second chakra is, the location is about like 3 fingertips below your navel. It's associated with our genitalia. And what Patsy was talking about, the idea of emotion, the emotional body, and the element is water. And this idea of like fluidity, which is really fascinating because the root chakra's element is, the earth, right? And so we're moving up into this more sensual place of our beings.
Yeah. And even going with the flow, with the first chakra where we find our stability. Okay, this is where I can be secure. It's like, okay, once I'm secure, how can I fly? How can I take off? How can I really, go with the flow?
Move forward.
Yeah.
And I love that about it. It's because what Patsy's talking about is like going with the flow. You find your structure, which is essential for you to move through life, to have something to hold on to, your essential values, your truths. And then you tap into this idea of being flexible.
Absolutely.
And not so rigid. So it's important to have that.
Yeah.
We need that stability, those roots. But then we also need
it's such a
ability
balance
to move. Yeah.
Yes. It's so easy to go one way too much or the other way too much of, once I trust and I have these roots down, it's easy, could be that we get stuck or to be on the other side of that. Okay, well, now I'm moving and I'm going with the flow. Well, where are my roots? Where can I find my trust? Where can I find my security?
Yeah. And it's so easy. The human experience is fascinating because the chakras are a roadmap to help us to find overall equanimity within ourselves. And through life and different seasons, we'll find ourselves kind of maybe out of balance in one area or the other. So don't see it as like, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person. I don't have my root chakra, or I'm all my second chakra. I'm all sensual and pleasure seeking. It's okay. It's just about learning to identify and become aware of actually what's happening in your body and your being, so you can see it and then hopefully do the work to bring a little more balance.
Yeah, work with it.
Yeah.
And I like also to touch on that it's not like once we conquer this sense of trust that we move on and on and on. And that it's like, that once we get to the upper chakras that we are a full human being who has nothing to work on. It's like almost like sometimes like, okay, I'm working my throat chakra. Well, shit, I really need to go back to my root chakra here.
Yes.
It's constant.
Yeah. I like that you said that it's not just like, all right, I'm going to work on my root and go all the way up. That's one way to look at your chakras, but it's constant. It's not like you got your root, I'm solid, I'm good to go, and moving on up, and then you like check box all these chakras off, and then you're at the top, and you're like, I'm done. What's next? I'm just going to sit here and meditate for the rest of my life. That's not how it works.
No. And that's the beauty of it, too.
Yeah.
I relate that so much with even just teaching yoga. Of I'm never going to be at this top ring of a ladder where I cannot work on anything else.
Yeah, that's
it's great. There's always something to look forward to.
Yeah, there's always something to learn.
Yes. And sometimes it's like, all right, universe, I'm getting it. Coming back to that one.
Again. You're like, what is it? Why am I here again? What is going on? But that's the ride of life. Like, that's just what happens. And I feel like, when we tap into the chakras, the universe or divine or whatever you want to call it, wants us to grow. Like, it's in us. Just like a tree has the desire, just the innate need to grow. Like, that's what's in its DNA, is like grow. Like, that's for us. And life will put situations and circumstances and people in our lives to be like a mirror. Hey, this is what you're in, like, reflecting back.
Yes.
Like, take a look at yourself.
And yeah, totally. And so, I mean, especially when we find judgment on someone else, I feel like that's a huge, okay, why do I feel this way? Why is anger or whatever coming up? Yeah, like, let's really study this, because it's more so about me than them if these feelings are arising, because that's the only one I have control over.
Yeah, exactly. How we respond.
Yes.
And so I think it's like trying to see life as a teacher and not as just like a life as a punishment of like, oh, well, we have this life, this one precious life. Let's touch all the edges and the corners of ourselves and our experience to kind of figure it out.
Oh, I love it. It's a gift. Like, I really love, and I know that you're familiar with this. Aubrey Marcus said after his accident, he had a terrible car accident, that it didn't happen to him, it happened for him. And that, I know. I keep thinking back on that these circumstances, these struggles, whatever we're going through, it's happening for us, and that perspective. And I was like, whoa.
Thanks.
Huge wisdom bomb. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah. It's happening for us.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
And it's about perspective. And sometimes life can be really fucking shitty. And it's like, oh, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Why me? And it's like, can we just take a moment to step out of our shoes, of our experience, and just like shift it, and just to see, like, hey, maybe there's something I'm really needing to see right now. And sometimes that's scary to look at. We talked about root and that the demon of fear. And it's like, but trying to move past that so we can be a little bit more fluid with life.
Yes.
Flexible.
I think it's like terribly hard to do that too, but, but it's so beneficial.
Like, how do we do that?
Oh my God. In the moment, when you're going through whatever, if you can somehow switch it to the perspective of it being a gift. But going to Svadhistana, there's two different translations.
Yes, let's hear them.
One is one's own dwelling place, and the other is sweetness.
Like nectar?
Yes, that's exactly what I think of.
Yeah.
Like, and I actually was thinking that, like, I was like, I should say nectar. So I'm glad you said that. Like the fruits of our labor almost. And for me, this one is so much about life is supposed to be pleasurable and enjoyable. And we are all creative in different outlets. You hear so often, I don't create, I'm not creative, but you really are.
Yes.
Maybe you just haven't tapped into it yet. But there's, going for walks and just picking up different leaves that are different colors, in that sense, that's your own creation of like, I am, picking up what I want. And then you're making your own palette, your own handful of leaves, which I don't know. Like, I'm like just like randomly.
I think that's right. I think it's like I also feel like people have this idea of what creativity or artistry means, and it's like, oh, if you're an artist, if you paint, if you're a sculptor, if you're a singer, these types of creative work. But it's like what you're saying. It's not just that. We both actually come from an art background. We both went to school for art. And, there's a part of me that really misses actually being in the studio and like the art studio and just like painting and making and creating. We're doing something this Saturday together and I'm really excited. But, and when we both had that switch and transition into the yoga world and teaching and education, and I would have people ask me like, "Oh, are you still creating?" And I would be like, "Well, I'm not painting like I was before, but when I like create my sequences or the music that I put together or the thoughts that I want to share, to me that's creativity,
big time,
and that's tapping into Svadhistana,
your creative sense. Yes, I feel that.
Yeah,
that was like it. going into my creative side of my sequencing and also, almost like orchestrating the bodies as I'm teaching, like moving the bodies and these
it's like
beautiful,
a dance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And letting it be their own experience. But for me, it's this beautiful experience of witnessing it too.
Yeah.
It's really nice. I know what you're saying about that being your creative sense. I'm so glad that my poor analogy of like walking and getting the different color leaves.
I love that. No, it's great. I want to do that, like a nature walk.
Yeah. And even, I'm just trying to think of like simple things that we do that you can be creative with, cooking.
I was just going to say cooking, or even like plating your food.
Yeah.
And like, I kind of geek out. I'm not ashamed of it. It's like, when I make a salad or something, I'm like, oh, like I just like seeing the colors put out and like how it comes out. And like a chef, when you go to like a really fancy restaurant and they're like the hors d'oeuvres and like, the sprouts that is put on. And, that's a creative outlet. Yeah, it's a presentation. Yeah. Or even like cleaning your house. Like that to me can be a creative way of like organization.
Yeah. And even meditation in its own right.
Yeah.
What is it? Sacha?
Sacha, cleanliness. Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think it's just looking past the realms of what creativity actually entails.
And that in itself is being creative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even, thinking outside the lens of like what you do with your friends. Like, is it the same thing, or are you going to go and do something different and fun and new? Go, to a pottery class, or just go, on a walk in the woods and just appreciate nature. And like that is seeing creation.
Yes. Oh, gorgeous. I feel like my biggest recommendation for second chakra activity is salsa dancing.
Oh.
Because it's moving the hips, moving the pelvis in a creative and sensual way. Yeah. And it really gets you in tune with that area where the second chakra is.
Yeah. And then your dwelling place. And it's sweet.
Yeah.
Dancing in general. Right. I just like...
Oh my God, we love dancing.
And like ecstatic dancing and just letting loose and not moving based on a particular structure, and I think moving in yoga can be very creative too. Like the students themselves moving, like I feel really sensual and and feeling pleasure in my body. Like oh, it feels so good, or and so just movement in general,
big time. Yeah, it's therapy.
Yes, yes.
What's interesting too is, I feel like sometimes I can spot a second chakra that is deficient, moving really slow, when the body is so rigid.
Oh.
When or when we start conversation with this person, and you can feel that maybe even they even say, I'm not comfortable in my own body. I don't even want to, talk about my sensuality, my sexuality.
Yeah.
And I do feel like as a culture, we almost want to make it deficient or under the covers, something that we don't want to talk about.
Yeah, you're right.
But sexual health is a huge part of our overall health.
Yes.
And it should be talked about.
Yeah. And I think that is a generational situation. And I feel like we're moving out of it a little bit. There's more and more books and conversations about sex and sexuality and pleasure. And it is important because that is a part of us.
Yes.
It's a huge part of us. And, every one of us came from two people having sex. And sex in itself is a very like an act of intimacy and, love and connection. And it can be, hopefully most of the time it is,
Yes.
And then we're birthed into existence from creation, from that creativity.
And I think keeping that intimacy, we're birthed from these two people being intimate.
Yeah.
We were created. We're like giving you guys the sex talk.
If you didn't know, this is what happens.
101. But keeping that own intimacy for yourself.
Yes.
Like carrying that beautiful, beautiful connection into yourself, like knowing your own body.
Yeah.
You know, I think that that's profound.
Yeah. So what do you mean by having that intimacy with yourself?
Okay. So little rituals that I like.
Yes. Let's hear.
A big one is self-massage. You know, I work in the morning, I try to massage with, I like coconut oil. But if you wanted to get into details of Ayurveda study and doshas, that's a whole other topic of which oil to use.
We'll talk about it too. Yeah.
Next. Coming soon. Yeah. But coconut oil, giving yourself a massage, but especially something I've started doing is it's a Mayan abdomen massage, and it's really low on the and it's good for males and females, but it is around the reproductive system, and it's great for digestion. It's great for reproducctive health.
And is there a way in which you're doing this?
Yeah.
Like a circular motion? Or was it?
Yeah. I go clockwise around the belly button first. And you use quite a bit of some pressure. I actually, when I first started doing this, because I do it right in the morning, really great in the morning after you've been like kind of fasting a little bit. I put my phone on the YouTube video and had like the girl like show me on my YouTube video. Oh. So I'm in bed doing it, and you know my partner's like, "Okay, this is kind of weird, but whatever."
Oh, I love that,
and I feel good. Like I feel like honestly, some part of it is a little psychological for me that I'm giving my lady part some love, you know, like in a really sweet way in the morning.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. And does your partner do this too to himself?
He should.
Oh. You should consider doing it.
Yes.
Interesting. Cool. I love that. That's beautiful.
Thanks.
You know, I was thinking about like this second chakra and like what it is, and this idea of like we're talking about creativity and like sexuality. And I was thinking about root chakra, and it's like, okay, this is earth, grounding, foundation. And I started thinking about like when you start in like the springtime, you see little like sprouts pop up. And I'm like, oh, that's second chakra. You know, there's like, okay, it found its roots. It's found its soil and nourishment. And then it's like, oh, life.
Oh, I like that.
And it's like a little dance and it unfurls. Yeah. And like right now I have this plant, this fern, and it's really excites me. Like, it's doing really well. I'm a good plant mama. I take good care of my plant babies. But it's always fun to see a new like fern like open up. And I'm like, oh, like that. That's that. That's second chakra. Or like a lotus flower or a flower blossom. Just like, whew,
oh my God. And it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Right. It's like the abundance of this like life itself.
Yeah. And it's like kind of vulnerability, you know, when it's opening, and it's like, you know, in the womb, you're like closed and you're connected. And then it's like life is like, whoa, like what is this? But, you know, it's like the same thing of a flower blossom. It opens and you like see it's in its deepest self, you know? And I think that's kind of the touching on Svadhistana. Like you got to open up to it a little bit.
Absolutely. And let yourself be vulnerable.
I was just going to say that. Yes. I love it.
I love it. But it's so the truth, you know, of when we are talking about finding your passion and being creative and sexuality, I think all of those three things, like you have to be vulnerable. You know, artists put their work out there, their heart out there, their soul out there. And then when we're with someone very intimate, we have to be vulnerable, you know, and when it's a sexual relationship, especially. And I just, I think that vulnerability is a huge part of it. Being courageous enough to be vulnerable.
And to communicate about it. I think even, you know, to kind of go down the, you know, just to be real honest. I mean, if you have your partner, hopefully that it's a place where it's like, sex is a beautiful thing, and it should feel really amazing to both sides.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, we were just in a conversation that, you know, men actually will have around like 86% of the time will have an orgasm. And females, it's like 67.
Right.
And I just like was flabbergasted by that because I don't think that's cool. And, you know, it's not like it has to happen every time, but I think there's because the demon of Svadhisthana is
shame.
Guilt.
Guilt. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's interchangeable, these words. But guilt. And I think it's like, I don't know why, if it's women being like feeling guilt that they just want to share, pretend like, I feel great. I'm not really, I feel good, but I'm not really like enjoying myself to the fullest. So I think in the sense of vulnerability is communication of like, you got to be able to be honest and communicate like, hey, like maybe, you know, that doesn't
feel right.
Yeah. Or like, oh, can you touch me like this or something like this? And there shouldn't be this guilt around it. It's like, hey, if there's two people trying to enjoy each other and please each other
and communicate about it.
Yeah. So and then it makes it fun.
Totally. And you can really enjoy and pleasure each other in the highest degree.
Yeah.
You know, if you can communicate your needs and wants.
Yes, exactly. And that it takes vulnerability and it's fighting guilt.
You're right.
You know what I mean?
Oh, big time. Yeah.
It's not letting it win.
Yeah. And I think also just knowing your own body, you know, and I guess that kind of goes back to the conversation of being intimate with yourself.
Yes.
Because I also think a lot of us don't know totally what we want. But being, you know, kind of fearless and exploring it, you know, it's taking the time to explore your own wants, I think can be really, again, I'm going to use the word profound.
Yeah, and therapeutic.
Yes.
And just, it brings you more in touch with body and mind. You know, I've said this before in the podcast, like we, like all of our senses, eyes, nose, ears, mouth, communication is all touch is like lives up here. And like we live in just like this computer like up here.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you have this whole body. And that's something we love about yoga is it brings body and mind together and it's in your body. So you start like, you're in a pose and you're like, oh, I really feel my hamstring stretching, you know? And it's like, oh, that feels really good, you know? And so you can experience that uncovering and sensation within yourself. And it doesn't always need to be like an act of sex, but it's just becoming aware of how you feel in your physical body.
Yes, yeah. And there's so many different ways to figure that out. Like you said, like it doesn't have to be an act of sex. It could be, you know, different types of movement or, you know, different types of creative expression.
Yes, yeah.
So, and we started talking about deficient. If the wheel's moving really slow, I think that in our culture, it stems from again, sex not really being talked about, especially from parent to child. Sometimes that conversation, you know, in different religions might even totally be skipped.
Yeah.
And as that child becomes a parent, I think that guilt does come up hugely when they start to be more active in their body and
explore,
their needs.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there's hiding from it too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And it's so bizarre. Because everyone does it.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And so it's why is there so much guilt around it? And it's I mean, in also just in our day and age, it's just like male to female or whatever, you know, gender relations are happening. I think there's a lot of miscommunication because there's not a lot of communication about it and honesty and real, like being in that place of connection.
Yeah.
I also think sometimes like sex is a very obviously physical act, but it also can be and very much is even more rich if it's in an emotional connection.
Yes.
And that emotional body is connected to second chakra.
Right.
And so there can be times when people have sex and it's just like, what? You know, or so two people are having this really intimate time together and really feeling each other and connecting and eye gazing and
a rich experience.
Yeah. And so it's like, you know, what do most people want?
Yeah. And need.
And what is it? You know what I mean? Don't we, is it, I don't know. For me, I'm like, I want to be intimate, you know, and I want to be able to connect and pass those veils of like,
that human connection.
Yes.
I mean, and I think it also goes back to babies have to be held to survive.
Yes.
I mean, we have to be touched. Like we need that. Yeah, those hugs and that intimacy. We need it to survive.
Yeah, and it makes us thrive.
Yes,
and I think it helps that the wheel turn. You know, and even a nice long hug. Can release oxytocin. And that feel-good hormone of that altruistic, like I feel connected and like seen and feel significant and important and valued. And, you know, you how you walk through life and the posture you hold really can show a lot about yourself. Like you were saying, like you can tell when someone feels like rigid or closed or not fluid, or someone who's like open. This past week I was in a training and someone noticed that I like walk like this a lot when I'm like teaching and I could hold. And they're like, why do you do that? And I'm like, because I don't want to sit like this when I teach because that's closing off my heart. And so it just gives me like, I'm going to open my heart.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
keep this open, this line of energy open so I can connect better. Not always. I mean, sometimes I'm sitting like this because it's more comfortable, but trying to be a little bit more mindful of like moving that energy on up.
Yeah. I think it's also a sign of, for me, the posture is like, if I'm actually not feeling very confident, if I adjust my posture, it can really change how I feel.
Yeah.
At least, it could even change how people perceive me to feel, which, and then maybe it changes how I feel.
Yeah. And how they feel too.
Yes.
So I want to dive into like more of this idea of guilt. Like where does that come from? Like, why do we experience that?
Yeah. I think it's such a societal thing. Like, especially, I mean, think about, especially as women, I want to say, the slut shaming.
Yeah.
That we, it's men have a right to have, more of a sexual healthy life than women. And I'm gonna say like men too. Like it's for the guilt. It's obviously not just women, but I think it's as we grow up, it's like unfortunate that we just don't have healthier, like it's almost like sex ed in elementary and then middle school or junior highs, like and high school is even like kind of a joke, It's like
it's
really
sad.
like let's really
we need to be a little more European. In the sex ed
tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, they all just go like straight out, little young kids, elementary school. They're showing everything. They're talking about like orgasm, even in like young age, and like how to pleasure, and it's just open.
Interesting. Yeah, that's beautiful.
And just like safe sex, and it's just and, it's not this like we kind of tiptoe and dance around it
and giggle about it.
Yeah. It's really strange.
Yes. I would be so interested to see, because I'm sure that they're out there, the studies between, European culture and our culture and sex in general,
I mean, you even see like even men in Europe, I was just there a few months ago, like are really like intimate with each other, and not and heterosexual relationships and like touching and, even like the kiss on the cheek. And it's just like, there's a lot more comfortability in their own sexuality.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, I like love that. Whether it's male, woman, female, homosexual, heterosexual, just having that sense of like, oh, we're just humans.
Right.
And wanting to show affection.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Not being afraid to do that too.
Yeah.
And also not being shamed for it, or whatever.
And I also think like, obviously when women gather together, conversations talking about like sex and intimacy, and men gathering together and talking about sex and intimacy, I think generally, I'm generalizing, is really different.
Yeah.
And like, oh man, I banged her real hard, and it's very physical. And not to say women don't experience that side of things too. Like we're not just like emotional beings. But I feel like there's also guilt potentially in like men talking about it of like, oh, actually I had this really intimate experience with my partner.
It's interesting. So my major in college is fine arts, and then my minor was psychology.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. So what's interesting is men actually do bond over activity.
Yes,
whereas females bond over emotions.
Yeah, conversation.
Yes, I know. It's fascinating. And even with children, the mother usually, this is just some study that was done, but she will have that emotional bond immediately. But it takes the father until the child is old enough to kind of partake in more activities to grow that bond.
Yeah. Yeah, women just have that natural, just like, oh yeah, let's chat. and go on for hours. Like, I'm like, I get pulled in real easily.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay. And so I think it's also a conversation. That's why I get really excited about this is, from the male viewers and female viewers, I think it's something healthy for both sides to talk about and even talk about it together.
Yeah.
And maybe that just starts with your partner. And exploring that idea and knowing that obviously second chakra isn't just about sex. It's about pleasure. And like what you said in the beginning about life can be and should be pleasurable for us in different ways.
Yes. And I do want to touch on, as you just said, it's obviously not just about sex. Like you can be celibate and have a very healthy second chakra.
Yeah.
Just being in tune with your creative side and your sensual side and your own body and how it can move and what feels right for you. But so I'm glad that you just said that.
And, and I shared in my story before I had a period of time where I was celibate and I was just like living art life, like 24/7, like crack of dawn, go to the studio and create and create and create and create and create. And it was such a rich and rewarding time of my life because it was all art and it was all creating.
Yes.
So that's why I think it's so interesting. I feel like as children, there's a lot more freedom and flexibility. I feel like that second chakra is like, woo, people are exploring their bodies and, you're like, oh, that's what you have? Okay, cool. And then also there's a lot more play. Like children are just a lot more like, let's play. Play a game, play a sport, and use your imagination.
Yeah.
And then it's like as we age and as we mature and have more responsibilities in life, it's like we lose that fluidity. We become more rigid, actually.
Yeah.
And that's closing down that second chakra.
Right.
And I just actually heard a study that was on NPR, and they were talking about there are less people having sex. Yeah. And they were talking actually about in relationship to like pornography and how it's like disrupting relationships.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And
then they're actually
human connection.
Yeah, I know. And they noticed that it's actually more prevalent in heterosexual relationships than homosexual relationships.
Oh my God, so
because of
fascinating.
And they were talking about like in pornography, like you see certain acts happening and you think, oh, I'm going to try that like on my partner. And they're like, oh, I don't like it. And no one communicates about it.
Right.
And so there's just like this like lack of that vulnerability. And I just found it really fascinating that was happening. And they were actually asking like, oh, are we worried about people not having as many children and things like that? And so all these studies being released. Yeah. So, but anyways, like I find that children have this like just innate sense to play and explore. And then we grow up and we have these responsibilities. And we kind of just become a little bit more like stagnant.
Yeah.
And
we're told how to be.
Yeah. And it's just because like this is the life that you kind of follow. And how can we reawaken that creativity? Like when you're a child, you're like, you're painting with your fingers and you get really messy and dirty and you're outside playing in the mud or, you're painting a picture, playing with Play-Doh or whatever it is. Like I see little stories my sister posts of my nephews like painting and finger painting and like painting nothing, but just like in it and like totally absorbed in it. And we don't like let ourselves have that opportunity to just create
and to also just be curious.
Yeah.
Like, children, like childlike curiosity of just exploring, like, what is this? I'm going to put my hands in it. It's like as adults, we're like, we don't have time.
Yeah. I don't even want to make time.
Right. Because we do have time.
Yeah.
We do have time.
If we really want to expand ourselves and grow, and it's there.
Yeah. And I encourage you, if you are one of our listeners that is thinking right now, well, I have to pay the bills. I have this 8 to 5 job or whatever the hours it is. I'm not happy in it, but it pays the bills. I really encourage you to take time to explore other outlets of what brings you joy. Because I do firmly believe that if you can explore your own joy, there will be a way to like provide that for you because you can make your passion what pays the bills. Yeah. It probably isn't going to be overnight, but I think giving yourself an opportunity to explore is going to be huge.
Right.
And as we just said, you do have the time, but you just have to prioritize. Okay, I go to my job, and then instead of going out with the girls, I'm actually going to spend time to see how it feels to paint or to cook or to take that salsa dance class, whatever it is.
Yeah. And just tap back into that curiosity, that childlike wonder of like, there's endless things that you can go and do and explore. And you can feel it when you are in it, and it feels really good. I just did this really cool photo shoot the other week where this artist like painted my body, and we did this cool photo shoot. And even though I was just like the model of it, it was just like it felt so good to be in this creative space with another artist. And I just was like, oh yeah, like I do miss that, and like I want to tap back into it.
Absolutely.
And realizing, oh, like I really want to prioritize that. I do want to make more time for that. And looking at art and just being around other people's creations, and their own like juiciness.
Sparks that like zest in you to do it.
Yeah. I like that word.
Thanks.
And like life, vitality.
Yes.
And, then there's the people who, if you're a listener and you are like super busy and you have children, and that's like, when am I going to do that? Like, do it with your children. Like, get, when you have them paint or play Play-Doh or whatever, like, let loose. Like, what an awesome opportunity to just like play. When I was nannying, I thought like that was my favorite time. Like when he wanted to like paint or get like whatever out, I was like, yes, let's do it. I think I might have had more fun than it. Yes, you want to do this? Let's stay and do it longer.
Yes.
And then you can connect better with your children.
Yeah, big time. Anything that anything that kind of just gets in the way, or like you're thinking like I can't do that because of this, like instead of second guessing, like doing it because of that, actually just go with it.
Yeah.
Like right now I'm thinking, I'm like, I see Christine every day. We work together day in, day out. And I'm like, we've never gotten cretive. So I'm so excited about Saturday. Yeah.
I know.
And we should do things like that more often
for both
of us.
Yeah, we should. I mean, like, and we've talked about before, like, oh, let's have like a little art party. But like, let's do it. Let's really do it and prioritize it. And that's for me, like even, our phones are can be a huge distraction, but also an amazing tool. And I just I like to post whatever I want to fucking post because for whatever reason, I'm drawn to it. And I took photography in school, and I'm not doing that obviously professionally, but I just still see it as a means of a creative outlet. I like to write poetry, or just free writing about life, or, whatever it is, whether you share it or not is up to you. I think for me, like I've been having this conversation with a few people of like social media is a really can be a dangerous place of being a little toxic, but also is a really beautiful place of inspiration and connection with people. And so I choose to be on the other side of it. Like I want to be positive about it. Like I don't I can see the negativity,
right.
But to me, I'm like, oh, it is a platform as an art maker. Even though I'm not a professional artist, I see it as a platform which I can share with the world. Whoever wants to look at my things, great. But it's a platform to be like, this is what I find interesting. This is what I want to talk about. Like, if you like it, great. Honestly, like, cool. If not, like, I just want to share it.
Absolutely. It's definitely like that balance of, for me, like, because I get inspired by seeing what other people post.
Yeah.
And then it's so easy for me to go down that rabbit hole of just staying in that place of being inspired and not actually taking action.
Yeah. But that's okay.
But yeah, right. It's still good to be inspired.
Yes.
And it's really great too to use social media for that vulnerability. I remember when I was starting to, being the struggling artist in college, and I actually was selling my artwork on Facebook. And it was really difficult at first. Like I did this collection of owl paintings.
Oh, I love owls. It's like my spirit animal.
Oh, well, maybe I should make you one.
Make me an owl.
But that was big because I I do remember getting some backlash of like, you're not really an artist. You just go to school for art, or like, this and that. Like, I can't believe you're trying to sell this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, rude, first off. But it was good for me to put it out there. And I did sell my work. It was a great way for me to like, and also not take anything personal.
Yes.
Whatever is going to be said about it, it's already out there. And that's just me.
Yeah. And also like, I think that goes back to that vulnerability of second chakra, of connecting to your emotional body, and expression, self-expression is huge. And I feel like even how we dress is an expression, and how we display is a self-expression. And so I don't know, in Austin, like I love it. Like people can get a little wacky with their clothing or whatever. Tattoos, piercings, hair. And I like, to me, I'm like, you got that second chakra. And like, you're moving in that. And I just, here I am, both of us all in black. I'm like, yeah. It's just easy. But, I just think it's looking beyond the box of how you can explore and express yourself and your emotional body. And going back to what you were saying earlier about getting to know yourself, I think self-care, and you were talking about like abdominal massage and things like this, is important. I think self-care is a part of second chakra. Yeah. It is very intimate time for yourself, whether you're going to get a massage, or giving yourself a massage, or you're taking a bath, or just being luxurious to yourself. Yes. That is connecting to your emotional body. Right.
I'm so glad you said taking a bath. Yeah. That water element.
Yeah, water.
Too,
yes.
Maybe even going for a swim.
Yeah. Yeah. We have one of our coworkers who goes to Barton Springs. It's like a natural spring that's like 67 degrees every morning. But I'm like, that's really great, actually, to be in that water element.
Refreshing.
Yeah.
And to start
cleansing
your day that way.
Yes.
So cool.
Yeah. Or, if you take a bath, winding down and being in that element of water. And for me, like the beach, like, whoa, that is a healing place. Being by the ocean. And there's a lot of studies done about how the beach and water is so healing, and it's just vast. And our bodies are made of water.
Yes.
And man, it's like our body itself is like, tap into yourself, literally like move into that fluidity and go with the flow. Because if you fight against life and you find yourself in that rigidity, that's where you're going to feel like just stuck.
Yes.
And maybe a little bit like stubborn, or like closed off, and not open to connection
and the possibilities.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Life's possibilities.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. So we've been talking about if it's moving too slow, but if it's in excess and it's moving too fast, that's when we find, the people who, maybe we find sex addicts. That's when we find people who are always on the go, always going with the flow, but not totally in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Again, losing the second chakra, maybe a little bit too sensual, not having boundaries.
Yes.
That's a huge one. Like, not having boundaries for yourself, but also not knowing that other people have boundaries.
Yes. Yeah. And like you might be like, oh, touch is amazing. I'm going to touch. But someone might be like, I'm not there yet, know, and having that respect, and also awareness of, hey, they might not appreciate that. They might not feel what you are trying, your intention is behind your touch.
Yes.
That like you might be like super loving, and then they're like, I don't like that.
Right. And it could spark something, like maybe there's a past harm that was done to them, or,
So what's the best way to create boundaries? Or find boundaries. Right. Like, how do we do that? With what are healthy boundaries for ourselves, and what are healthy boundaries with
other people? I think, meditating is a huge tool in so many different areas, and because of so many different areas that it brings, the benefits are boundless. And so one of them I would say is meditation helps me personally with my own energy of how I'm feeling. But I also think that as I go on through my day, it helps me be more in tune with other people's energy and reading, what they're going through. If like as Christine said, she puts her arms behind her back, I know that she's open. Like, I feel comfortable going up to her and giving her a hug. But if I am reading someone's energy with their arms closed, or maybe they're taking a step away from me, I'm going to listen to that and respect that.
Yeah. You can always give me a hug.
Yes. Ditto.
I love, and that I also think about like culturally, that's really fascinating because, our culture seems a little bit more spacious. Like we have, especially here in Texas, it's like, here's your house, your car, your yard. And it's just like expansive, and we're a little bit more individualistic when you're like in a city like Paris or Istanbul or any of these, very European countries that are like mega cities. Everyone's like piled on top of each other. And it's just like, you're just naturally closer to everyone. Or even like in Chicago and New York, which is really interesting. Yeah. They're really packed, but actually not super warm.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating that you can be so close. You're like on the train in the L and you're like smelling someone's armpit.
But you don't make eye contact.
Yeah, right. And like, you better not. Or don't even communicate to them. Where in like Europe, you're at a coffee shop and someone will just sit down at your table because that's just how their culture is, where ours is like, no, there's like one person at a table.
Right. Or, like that one person that's at a table with 8 seats, but people are not going to sit there because there's already someone there.
Yeah. So I think our boundaries also can be influenced based on our upbringing. And we have to really look at those samskaras, those patterns that we've been raised with, because what if it is very closed off and you're really trying to reawaken into your own connection with yourself and other people? That's a challenging thing to be like, all right, okay, how can I get a little bit more connected and open and vulnerable? I think it's finding those people that you trust and you feel safe with, and then start exploring physical touch. Not even in a sexual way, just like, reaching out and like giving someone a squeeze and like, oh, that feels really nice to do that and to also receive it. And then also if someone, I think, is like, you feel, and every day is different. So like if you're feeling like off or a little closed, be okay communicating that. Hey, I'm like, I need some space today.
Totally. Yes.
Because then you might fall into resentment.
Yeah. Or just like give too much. Like it's like, if you're already feeling like you need to conserve your energy,
like that.
And then you're giving it, by giving hugs, and if you're a yoga teacher, giving your hands-on love, you're going to feel depleted. I think it's fun to kind of experiment if you aren't already, like hands-on-y, touchy-feely, whatever you want to call it. Just see, as she was saying, just play with it. See how it feels to, give more people hugs, to make deeper eye contact, to put your hand, on their shoulder, give them a little bit of some love, and to play with how you feel and also notice their response. I have found, people do need healthy boundaries, but I have found that more people need that human connection, that love, you know, and it makes a difference for their day. That might be the only time they are touched their entire day.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really incredible for their day.
Yeah. And I've shared this before. When I first moved to Austin, I didn't really know anyone, and I jumped into this practice of Ashtanga, which is very traditional, but is very much like work one-on-one with your instructor, and there's a lot of hands-on adjustments. And like I thrived off of that because I didn't have anyone. Yeah. And it just was like I felt really taken care of and nurtured and like seen. And it really, really impacted me in a positive way.
Especially being new to the city.
So, but then there's people who don't like that.
Right.
And not only touch, but also boundaries of like conversation. I was having a conversation recently about what happens when someone comes to you and shares all their shit? And, you know, and you have to be mindful of, you know, it's really nice when you have the people in your life that you can share with, but then it's like, if someone comes to you and you're like, you're not in a place to receive, can you be in your grounded root chakra and say, I hear you. I can't expand on my perspective of that right now. And I hear you, I love you, but right now I can't engage with what you're sharing with me. And that's a boundary, and that's hard. Boundaries are like, you know, with second chakra, it's like you want to be fluid with your boundaries. You don't want to just create a box around yourself, but at the same time communicating your needs and wants. And what you feel safe or not safe with.
Big time. I think that boundary in itself can be fluid. You know, it's like this thing that morphs and forms with your feelings as well and what you're needing and wanting. And I think caregivers in general, anyone from teaching to, you know, in the field of medicine is really, it's so important to create those healthy boundaries, because I tell my students, you know, every now and then I have a student who I love getting close to my students, but I do have to say, you know, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a professional with this, but I do have great recommendations. Because I was finding too, because I want to be there for them. I'm a woman of yes. That
you're so nurturing.
Yeah, and I love it. But I was finding that I was going home and I was wondering why I was getting sick. You know, I'd be like, oh, I just don't feel good. I'm tired. I'm exhausted all the time. And I honestly think that it's because in the first like 5-6 years of teaching, I was giving so much. And that included after teaching, after giving, you know, an hour and a half, I would spend another hour with my students as they would talk and tell me about their lives. And, sometimes it got to a point where it was too much on me.
So what did you do?
I would say, I would use those words, you know. I would also use my time as being, I would respect my own time. And I would have to communicate that to them of, you know, hey, look, I've really got to run. I love chatting, but, you know, if you want to keep talking about this, I would recommend, you know, my good friend, Sarah, she's a great therapist, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
She's
passing it off.
Yeah, or a life coach, you know, whatever their needs are, you know, nutritionalist. I like having people on hand who specialize in those type of things.
Yes, expanding your network. I love that. And especially in the yoga world, like I want to move from a place of compassion. So if someone wants to reach out and share what's going on, I want to be open and to hear, but at the same time, I got to respect how I'm doing. So if I'm going through something really tumultuous or just like, you know, life, and I'm not in that like place where I really can be for them, I need to communicate that to them out of respect for myself, but also for them. And that's a boundary that's actually, boundaries are healthy. Like we think about boundaries as like kind of keeping us away or separate from other people, but actually like it's important to have boundaries. When you are a child and you are being raised, boundaries are very much presented in the household of like, okay, you know, what is acceptable and what is not. And, you know, even like rules, children will actually thrive on that because they can know like what is right and what is wrong. And not, unfortunately, sometimes the rules or parents that they create can actually be unhealthy. But if it's done well and with consideration of like, I want to help this child grow, rules can be, you know, structure, I should say, is really a place where people can thrive. And providing that as adults for one another too.
Right. I think unhealthy boundaries is a big thing with second chakra. Because if the wheel is also spinning too fast, then we find this sense of dependency on each other and we lose that sense of our own independence. You know, and if we can have those healthy boundaries and we can give each other the, you know, intelligent space, the space that like, okay, I know that us, you know, whatever that space looks like, I know that if we take that time, when we do come back together, we're going to be stronger and in a better headspace for ourselves to be there for each other.
Yeah. And I'm hearing, are you talking about like relationships, like partnerships?
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
No, that makes sense. I'm just, I totally agree. I feel like in relationships, it's really easy to get enmeshed with one another. And it's like, okay, but you are your own person. Even though like the idea of like, oh, two becoming one, it's like, well, you're still two.
Yeah.
And you're still independent and you're still you and I'm still me. And it's really important to have your own life.
Big time.
And then come back and have life together.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think that you're going to be stronger because you've had your own experiences. And also recognizing that on this path, you too, part of the second chakra, you're not always going to be aligned and like moving and changing in the same way. Like sometimes it's going to be one of you going over to the right side, the other one's going over to the left side, and then you come back again. But respecting that change is life. Life is change. Like that is, as we said before, that change is the only constant.
Yes.
And respecting that for your partner.
Yeah.
I think that's really big, that we're not just, like being too stuck in our first chakra where, this is just this person is that way and they have to be that way until the end of time.
Yeah. Because hopefully, I mean, if we're in a healthy relationship, you want your partner to grow and to evolve and to explore and to continue to expand their perspectives and then at the same time communicate about those things. And that's where I think there's lack of communication is, hey, you're together and then you go off and you're like doing your thing and you're exploring and you're expressing and you're creating and then other partners like back and behind and then you come back and you're like, hey, but you're not communicating all those new ideas.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then there's there's like you're rubbing up against each other instead of like coming back to each other.
I can say I'm the worst at that. Like Chad's like, what are you doing? Like, you talk to me. And I'm like, well, I just had this really great experience, but I got to go to bed.
But I think there's, yes, I totally agree. I think I'm wondering, I don't know the answer. Is this more of a female-based situation where we're like, out and about? Like, for me, I'm just like on the go and I'm like, have all these experiences and connections and I'm like, wow, life is amazing. And then, but the importance of like sharing that with each other, and you don't, it's not like you got to share like every single detail of your day. No. That would be really boring.
And you want to keep some of it to yourself.
Yeah.
Like it's, some of it, it's really pleasurable. I'm not going to, we look at secrets like they're such bad things, but it's really pleasurable to have some privacy for yourself. Like this little golden nugget is mine. Yeah.
And maybe I'll, and I don't need to share it all with you right now. Maybe it's, an unfolding over time. Yeah. And I think a healthy relationship, if it's going to last a long time, romantic or friendship is like, it's always unfolding, and there's always some like, especially if you let that person grow and explore, like there's something new and exciting to learn about them and like what's new in your life, and it's like not the same old every day.
Right.
Where that gets like boring and then that slows that wheel down.
And it's so easy to get into that rut in a relationship of expectations, of almost like, oh my gosh, like we have these set roles in this relationship. You do this and I do that. And then it becomes more than expectations, assumptions that they're going to respond that way and be that way. And I think that's really scary. I think that could be dangerous.
Yeah.
Dangerous for yourself.
Yes.
And dangerous for your relationship. I have found that the healthiest is when I do have those like experiences on my own and I do allow what you just said, like let it unfold naturally. Like we love to take road trips together and I look forward to them because I know that I'm going to be chit-chatting with him about things that we don't talk about every day and that like I just don't think to share.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So carving out some time. And I think also with like your partner, like, okay, like it's not just about like having good sex with your partner and communicating about your pleasure needs. But I think it's also about, okay, how about you go do something creative together, and like tap into that with one another, because I think that will also help grow your own intimacy, whatever that looks like, share. Like maybe you're like not so into painting and your partner is like, but can you just maybe for a night, just try it with them. You know what I mean? Because you love them and you're like, let's just try it and have fun.
Totally, yes. And if that's like really a hard no, then what about bringing your two creations together? Like, okay, they enjoy playing the guitar. I love to paint. Let's do it together. At the same time.
Yeah, and just creating that energy with one another.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I'm so inspired right now.
You're like, I'm going to do that. Kat's going to play the guitar and you're going to paint. I love it. That's beautiful. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
We hope that this is inspiring to you.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of homework, if you wish to explore, would be to make a list or to meditate about things that are inspiring to you, whether it's poetry or writing or music or you dancing, cooking. The list can go on. Everyone has something, maybe multiple things, and maybe it's just a little like idea right now. You're like, maybe I want to try it. Like, go and try it, and be okay being a beginner at it.
Totally encourage your curiosities and encourage your your failures, because allow that to even be play.
Yeah,
it's all play.
Yeah, and I think just think of it as playful, and then also if you are in a relationship, a romantic relationship with someone, or you're dating, I encourage you to consider being a little bit more open and vocal about what your needs are, and just see. And it might be a little scary, but I believe that you'll actually be quite surprised if you just communicate, and it might just bring a little more spice.
Yeah. And we'd love to hear your feedback. Let us know. Our email's patsy@blackswanyoga.com, Christine@blackswanyoga.com. We are open books and we love to communicate with you.
Yes. Thank you guys so much. We hope to see you soon. Namaste.
Namaste.